The unlikely encounter introduction. A chance encounter that changed everything. It was a warm afternoon in Los Angeles. The kind of day where the sun shone just enough to give a pleasant warmth without the heaviness of the midday heat. The cool breeze drifted in from the west, cutting through the city's hum, giving everyone walking down Melrose Avenue a brief moment of relief. But for most people, life didn't stop for the weather. It was just another busy day in the city, filled with rushing people, meeting friends, grabbing coffee, and running errands. Yet, in the midst of this ordinary day, there was something extraordinary about to unfold, something that would forever alter the course of two very different lives. At the corner of Melrose Avenue, there was an upscale cafe, the type where the chairs were designed to look chic yet uncomfortable, and the coffee was more about the status than the actual caffeine. Seated at a corner table, with his face partially hidden by a pair of dark sunglasses, was Victor Hargrave, a billionaire tech mogul whose name had made headlines around the world. For years, Hargrave had built his empire, expanding his company into territories most people only dreamed of. His face graced the covers of magazines, and his company was a household name in Silicon Valley. The world saw him as a genius, an icon of success, and a symbol of what hard work and ambition could achieve. But today, he wasn't the figure everyone recognized from the boardrooms or the media. Today, he was sitting alone, at a quiet table, enjoying the solitude of the moment. With his long fingers resting gently on the edge of his coffee cup, his thoughts seemed far away. The world outside bustled, yet Hargrave appeared lost in his own reflection, perhaps contemplating his next move, his next big project, or maybe, just maybe, wondering if all of it had been worth it. Despite his immense wealth, there was something melancholic about him that day. It wasn't the first time he'd been alone, nor was it the first time he'd sat at this cafe, but it was different this time. There was a palpable stillness to the way he sat there, as if waiting for something, though he wasn't sure what. Across the street, almost unnoticed by the people walking by, stood a different man. A man whose appearance seemed to reflect the harsh realities of life in a way that was so raw, it was impossible to ignore. His clothes were tattered and worn, each layer telling a story of cold nights, long days spent in search of a warm meal, and the relentless pursuit of survival. His hair was unkempt, and his hands were shaking slightly as he held a small cardboard sign. The sign read, "Any help appreciated. $1 can make a difference." His name was Alex, and for the past month, he had been living on the streets of Los Angeles, having lost his job in a factory after the recession hit and his savings evaporated. Alex's story was all too common. The man who had once dreamed of success, a life filled with stability and comfort, only to find himself on the unforgiving pavement of the city. The once bright future he had once imagined had slipped away, like sand through his fingers. Alex hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. His stomach growled loudly, a constant reminder of his dire situation. As he looked around the cafe, his eyes fell on the man sitting alone in the corner. Victor Hargrave, the billionaire, the tech mogul, the person who seemed to have everything. In that moment, something deep inside Alex stirred. What did he have to lose? He had nothing but the clothes on his back and the small piece of cardboard in his hands. With a deep breath, Alex made a decision. He could feel the weight of the moment, each step towards Hargrave's table growing heavier than the last. His heart raced. He wasn't sure what to expect, but hunger and desperation often have a way of stripping away one's pride. It wasn't about the money. It was about something deeper, the chance to be seen, to be acknowledged, even if just for a moment. As he approached the table, he hesitated. Could he really ask someone like him, someone who had everything, for help? His voice barely above a whisper, Alex leaned in slightly, his eyes darting nervously around the cafe. "Excuse me, sir," Alex began, his words trembling as if they were breaking free from some long-forgotten part of him. "Can you spare $1?" For a moment there was silence, the kind of silence that feels like an eternity. Victor Hargrave looked up slowly, his sunglasses now resting at the edge of his table. His expression was unreadable. He didn't speak immediately, and in that brief moment, Alex's anxiety surged. Had he made a mistake? Was he about to be dismissed? But then, Just as Alex's doubts started to rise, something unexpected happened. Victor didn't just nod or hand him some loose change. No, he did something far more surprising. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his gaze locking onto Alex with an intensity that was almost unsettling. It wasn't a judgmental look. It wasn't dismissive. It was a look that suggested something deeper, something that made Alex feel both vulnerable and strangely understood. Victor's eyes studied him, almost as if he were trying to piece together the story that Alex had been hiding for so long. Alex shifted uncomfortably under that gaze, unsure of what would come next. The billionaire's face remained calm, but there was a quiet curiosity there. After what felt like an eternity, Victor spoke, his voice steady and calm, yet carrying a sense of authority. $1, huh? He said. Tell you what, why don't you sit down and let's talk? Alex blinked, caught off guard by the invitation. Was this real? Was this man truly offering to talk to him, to listen? The thought seemed almost absurd, but something in Victor's eyes, the way he looked at Alex, not as a beggar but as a person, made Alex feel like maybe, just maybe, there was something more to this than just a handout. Sit down, Victor repeated, this time with a small smile that softened the weight of the situation. And so, Alex sat down. He felt a strange sense of surrealism, as though he had stepped into a scene from one of those old movies, where the unlikely hero meets the wise sage who offers life-changing advice. As he sat across from Victor, Alex could hardly believe what was happening. The billionaire, a man whose life seemed so far removed from his own, was offering him not just money, but his time, his attention. And that, in that moment, was something far more valuable than any dollar. Alex glanced down at the cardboard sign he'd placed on the table. He adjusted it slightly, trying to hide its worn edges, as if somehow it would reflect on him. But there was no judgment in Victor's gaze. Instead, there was curiosity, an unspoken question that lingered in the air. Tell me your story, Victor said, his voice calm and steady. How did you get here? The conversation that changed everything. The weight of desperation. Alex's hands trembled as he sat across from Victor, the billionaire mogul whose name echoed through the city, through the tech industry, and across global markets. It was surreal, the kind of moment that didn't seem possible. He had asked a simple question, one that many would deem ridiculous, a request for $1. But what he had not expected was an invitation to sit, to talk, to be listened to. As Alex sat there, trying to steady his breath, he felt exposed in a way he hadn't in years. His mind raced through the harshness of his reality. The empty days filled with hunger, the sleepless nights spent on cold, unforgiving streets, the shame of not having a roof over his head. But what overwhelmed him more was the relief that he wasn't being dismissed. For the first time in so long, someone was listening. Someone wanted to know his story. For Alex, this simple moment of humanity was almost too much to bear. Victor, meanwhile, seemed entirely at ease. The silence between them stretched on, but it was a comfortable one, filled with an unspoken understanding that neither was in any rush. Victor wasn't hurried, and Alex wasn't about to rush through the story he had carried in his heart for far too long. It felt like an invitation to let down his guard. So, tell me, Victor repeated, his voice steady. How did you get here? Alex shifted, trying to gather his thoughts, but it was difficult. How could he sum up a life that had spiraled so quickly? His mind went back to the days when he had been a proud contractor, when things had been easier, more secure. He had a crew. He had steady work. The future had seemed bright, and his life had felt filled with purpose. But everything had changed, as it often does when the unexpected comes crashing down. I was a contractor, Alex began, his voice cracking as the weight of the words left his mouth. I had a good job, steady work. I had a crew of my own, built my own business. Life was good. But then the recession hit. The jobs dried up, the economy tanked, and everything that seemed secure started slipping away. At first, it was just a few late notices. Then the bills piled up. And then, well, you can guess the rest. Alex stopped there, glancing down at his hands. His fingers, though rough and calloused from years of labor, now felt fragile, exposed in front of this stranger. Victor didn't interrupt, didn't offer any words of pity. He simply listened, nodding slowly as Alex spoke. That was all Alex needed in that moment. To be heard. I spent my whole life building other people's homes, Alex continued, his voice thick with regret. And now, I can't even keep a roof over my own head. Victor's face remained calm, but there was something in his eyes that softened. He understood. He had been there before. Perhaps not in the same way, but he understood what it was like to lose everything, to feel the weight of failure crushing you. And more importantly, Victor understood the one thing that Alex needed to hear more than anything else in that moment. It wasn't too late to change. A moment of clarity. Victor leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table, his hands clasped in front of him. The air between them seemed to change, the world outside fading away as the two men shared this quiet moment of connection. Victor's gaze was steady, not with judgment, but with something more profound. A quiet understanding of the struggles Alex had faced. But it was more than just sympathy. There was a deeper purpose behind Victor's gaze, an intention to guide Alex, to help him see beyond the immediate struggle and into the possibility of a new beginning. "What do you want, Alex?" Victor asked, breaking the silence. Alex blinked, caught off guard by the simplicity of the question. "What do I want?" he repeated, barely able to process the depth of the inquiry. "I want to get through the day. I want to survive. I want to eat, just to make it through this." Victor nodded, taking in Alex's response with quiet consideration. But then, with a slight shift in his posture, Victor offered something that Alex hadn't expected. "That's not a chapter," Victor said, his voice firm but calm. "That's a sentence." Alex was taken aback. "A sentence?" he echoed, confused. Victor's expression softened as he leaned back in his chair, his eyes searching Alex's face as if looking for something more than just a man down on his luck. "Yeah, you can't live your life in just a sentence. It's not enough. You need a chapter, Alex. A real one. A chapter you can build on." Alex's heart skipped a beat. What did that even mean? A chapter? He had never considered the future in terms of a story, much less as a new chapter. In his world, there had been no room for dreams anymore, only survival. But as Victor spoke, a flicker of something, perhaps hope, began to stir deep within him. Victor continued, his voice lowering slightly. "You're still here, Alex. You're still breathing. You're still asking for that dollar. Your story isn't over yet. It's just the beginning." For the first time in years, Alex thought about his life not as a series of unfortunate events, but as something that could be rewritten. He wasn't done yet. There was still more to his story. The business card. But as Victor's words sank in, Alex's skepticism began to creep back in. He had heard promises like this before. People had told him to keep going, to push through. But the world had a funny way of leaving people like him behind. No matter how many times he tried to pick himself up, something always seemed to drag him back down. Could he trust what Victor was saying? Victor must have sensed the hesitation in Alex's eyes because, without missing a beat, he reached into his jacket pocket. Alex's breath caught in his chest. This was it. Victor was about to offer him the dollar he had asked for. But instead, Victor pulled out a small business card and slid it across the table. Alex looked down at it, bewildered. "What's this?" "It's a shelter," Victor said, his voice gentle but firm. "They'll help you get back on your feet. You can get cleaned up, find work, maybe even a place to stay. But it's up to you to take the first step." Alex stared at the card, his mind racing. It wasn't money. It wasn't a quick fix. It was a chance, a real one. But could he trust it? "You don't know me," Alex said, his voice cracking. "Why are you doing this?" Victor's expression softened, and his eyes narrowed slightly in thought. "Because someone did it for me once," he said quietly. "I wouldn't be sitting here today if they hadn't. I wouldn't have gotten to where I am without that help. Sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you." Alex's fingers hovered over the card. It felt fragile, like something that could slip through his fingers at any moment. Could he believe in this? Could he believe in himself? The road to redemption conclusion. A difficult first step. After their conversation, Alex left the cafe with a business card in his hand and a heart filled with confusion, hope, and fear. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows along the street as he made his way back toward the shelter Victor had mentioned. The card felt heavy, as if the weight of an entire life rested in the small piece of paper. What did it mean, really? Could one gesture, one person's belief in him, actually make a difference? He had been in the depths for so long that trusting someone else again felt like a leap of faith that he wasn't sure he could take. As he stood in front of the shelter, Alex's mind raced. It wasn't a luxury hotel. It wasn't a quick fix. It was a place for people like him, people who were struggling, people who were forgotten by the world. But the card, Victor's card, felt like a lifeline. A small part of him couldn't help but think, maybe this is the start of something new. Inside the shelter, it was overwhelming at first. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the noise of hurried footsteps and voices echoing off the walls felt cold, mechanical, and out of place. Alex didn't belong here. At least, that's what he told himself. He was used to the streets, used to blending into the background, to being invisible. But as he looked around, he saw people who, like him, had stories of loss, of pain, of brokenness. And for the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't invisible. He was seen. The staff were kind. They didn't judge him for how he looked, didn't flinch when he asked for help. They simply treated him like a person. And for Alex, that was the beginning of something bigger than just survival. It was the first step towards rebuilding his life. Days turned into weeks. The shelter helped him secure a job at a nearby warehouse. A job that wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. It gave him a sense of purpose, something he had lost a long time ago. He worked hard, determined not to waste the opportunity that had been handed to him. His small steps toward stability began to accumulate, like bricks being laid one by one. He rented a modest apartment with a roommate. It wasn't much, but it was his own. And that was more than he had ever dreamed of in the past year. The roof over his head was a victory, a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. A letter of gratitude. But through it all, Alex never forgot that moment in the cafe. The conversation with Victor, the billionaire, had changed something deep inside him. It wasn't the dollar. It wasn't the job. It was the belief that Victor had shown in him. And so, months later, after getting back on his feet, Alex wrote a letter. It was a simple letter, filled with gratitude and hope. He didn't expect a reply. He wasn't looking for recognition. But he needed to acknowledge the man who had given him the one thing he needed more than anything: a second chance. In his letter, Alex told Victor about the progress he had made, how he had started volunteering at the same shelter that had helped him, sharing his story with others who were struggling. He had become a symbol of resilience, of possibility, of what can happen when someone is given the chance to start over. Victor's reflection. When Victor received the letter, he read it carefully, his eyes softening as he took in the words. He had no expectation of recognition. For him, helping Alex wasn't about charity. It wasn't about receiving thanks. It was about offering someone the same opportunity he had been given when he was younger. Victor folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, one of many small mementos from his life. It was a reminder of where he came from, of how far he had come, and how sometimes a small act of kindness could ripple out and change someone's life in ways no one could predict. In the end, Victor's belief in Alex had sparked a chain reaction. Alex's willingness to try again had given him the strength to rebuild his life, and now he was passing on that belief to others. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the shelter. It wasn't even about the job. It was about the belief that we can always choose to change our story, no matter how far we've fallen. The power of small acts of kindness. Alex's journey wasn't an easy one. It took time, took hard work, and most of all, it took courage. But what truly set it all in motion was the simple act of being seen, of being listened to, by someone who believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. Victor's words resonated deeply with Alex. It's not about how hard you fall. It's about whether you're willing to get back up, even when the odds are stacked against you. And that was the turning point. Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you. one person to offer a hand to give you the chance to change. And in that moment, the world can shift. For Alex, that person was Victor Hargrave, the billionaire who saw beyond his circumstances and saw the potential in him. This story is a reminder that no matter how low we may fall, we are never too far gone to begin again. It shows us the power of compassion, the importance of not turning our backs on others in their time of need, and the simple truth that kindness can change lives, one person, one moment at a time. Final thoughts. A new chapter awaits. So, what's the next chapter of your story? Just like Alex, we all have the power to rewrite our futures. Whether we've made mistakes, whether we've faced hardships, or whether we've stumbled along the way, it's never too late to choose a new path. The question is, are you ready to take that first step? Life may not always be fair, but as Victor so wisely put it, it's not about how hard you fall. It's about whether you choose to get back up and keep going. And sometimes, all we need is one person to believe in us, to remind us that we can do it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We all have our struggles, but just like Alex, we can choose to rewrite our story, one chapter at a time. Sometimes it only takes one person to believe in us, to help us see the possibility of change. So ask yourself, what's the next chapter of your story? If you feel inspired by this message, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We believe in the power of second chances, and together, we can spread hope and kindness to those who need it most. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's never too late to take that first step.